Test, test, test.
Oh, yes.
I actually came back the second day.
Yeah, that's good. You shout out. We'll do introductions just real quick so we don't have to do them. Well, we'll do them when we get going, I guess.
He's a
But
glutton for punishment.
yes, exactly. Okay, so I'll call this meeting to order. This is Alpine Town Council work session on July 16th at 7 o'clock. We've got the Pledge of Allegiance on here, so darn it, we're going to do it. Let's do it. I go here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for that. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Good evening. Council Member Larson.
Here.
Council Member Burchard.
Here.
Mayor Green.
Here.
Council Member Weirda.
Here.
And Council Member Scafidi. Mayor Green, you have a quorum of the council, which isn't necessary in a work session. However, Council Member Scafidi is absent presently.
Okay. This is like way too formal for this, but so can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
Motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion. It's been seconded. All those in favor of adopting the agenda, say aye.
Yay.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So the purpose of this meeting is to discuss the Alpine Water Master Plan that you guys have been working on for quite some time. So let's do introductions real quick from your side of the table, and looks like your microphone is on, but Lonnie, if you don't mind, you just hit that button, and then go ahead. And, yeah, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lonnie Olson. I'm with Water Development Office. I'm a project manager there in the planning division, and I was a project manager overseeing this report, and I'll pass it on to Ryan.
Okay, Ryan Erickson with Sunrise Engineering, and we're the ones that put this together, and we'll be presenting this to you.
Robert Hood with Sunrise Engineering also.
And if Bern, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, Bert Nickley, appreciate the opportunity to come in by Zoom. I can hear the mayor and I can hear you, Ryan, but not anybody else. So, if I stumble around some, I hope you'll be indulgent.
Okay.
Well, it sounds like you got the most important people that you can hear, so anyway, we'll work on making sure you can hear. But if anyone needs to ask a question to Bern, make sure you speak directly into your microphone. If you can't hear, we'll make sure we find a microphone that will work that he can hear. But yeah, and if you're not speaking, it might be wise just to turn off your microphone so we don't get any side noise that will help Bern. But anyways, we'll let you guys take it from here.
And you're going to start, right, Lonnie?
All right. So I'm Lonnie Olson, and I'll just start off with this. I'm going to do some bookends just because it's probably been a little bit since most of y'all have seen me. I know probably not for Craig. He sees me every month. But so with this bookends, we'll just proceed. So the applicant for this was the town of Alpine, and you guys applied back in February of 2023 for this project, so it's been a while. So just to document what happened since that initial application by the town.
There we go. Sorry, we finally got your slide up.
We'll go in one more.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So little agenda, just I'll introduce myself and the consultants. They'll present the draft study, or the study and draft results, and this will highlight some of the products that were created just for the town of Alpine. And then within this plan, there's recommendations of stuff that you can do to your water system. You're not bound by this, but it's just recommendations from an unbiased look at your water system, so it's kind of a nice way to look at your system. And then one of the main things is with these recommendations, they cost money, so we do also look at funding and financing options, so you're not kind of down the river without a paddle. And then they do have long-term suggestions for the future of Alpine. It doesn't look at the next year, it's more of a 20-year look, or it's probably more than 20, it's 25-year look. Okay, we'll do, okay. So the funding source for this was the state of Wyoming through the Water Development Office. Our office is funded through mineral severance taxes. So it's not anyone's actual taxes, but it's just from our mineral royalties that we do get. So it's kind of a nice way to put our non-renewable resources into our renewable resources. In the process, as I said earlier, it started in February of 2023, and we're hoping to get everything finalized by September of 2025. And that's just when we'll have everything final.
Thank you to the state of Wyoming for funding this the study.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So the process. So in February of 2023 is when the town council certified their resolution and submitted their application fee to our office. Then we had a site visit in March of 2023.
I bet you that's the Zoom link or the live feed that he's got there. Hey, Bern, we're getting a big echo there, and I don't know if it's because the live feed, but.
Thanks, Bern. So then we had a site visit in March. It was not myself. It was another one of my coworkers, as I wasn't with the Water Development Commission at that time. And it was a favorable recommendation that then got presented in May of 2023 to the Water Development Commission. And that just allowed us to proceed forward with the request for proposal process. So then we had a few consultants put in for it. And then between in July, we had a pre-proposal meeting out here, so Water Development Commission and the potential consultants came out, looked at the system, put together their proposals, and we go through a pretty thorough process of selecting a consultant. We take pride in that just because we want it to be fair for everyone. And then after that, we had interviews, and there was a consultant selected based on those interviews, and that was Sunrise out of Afton, Wyoming, who's here with me today. And then in January, it went into the 2024 Omnibus Water Bill, the planning one, and the legislature approved that. And after the governor signed it, it gave us funding for this project. But we weren't able to proceed until we have some office requirements that we have to go through with insurance documents, so we had to get those all set up. So the notice to proceed was a little bit later, and that was in April. And then myself, we had a meeting here, I believe it was in May of last year, just kind of to kick it off and go over what we were looking for with our scope of work. And here we are today with the draft report and the results meeting, and hopefully in September we'll have it all finalized. I don't see any issues why we wouldn't, but that's the goal, is to have everything finalized in September. And then you have like 2 more slides. So as I've already kind of mentioned, where did the funding come from? It was from the 2024 Omnibus Water Bill, and the appropriation for the study was $153,000. And then we have a standardized scope of work for all of our projects in the office, but then we do change it a little bit for every community since they're all a little bit unique. So we had our standard one, but then we did add a few other things to it. One was looking at the mega well more in depth than we would have other studies. And then one thing to note is that we did have monthly progress meetings with the town of Alpine, the engineers, and myself, just to make sure that we were all moving along and staying all along the same road. And I don't think we have a sign-in, so we can go into Ryan.
Okay, my turn. Thanks, everyone, for listening to all this. I'll give it a little bit more on water development and some of the studies that they do. So this is a level 1 study. It's kind of a big picture view of things. It's not a real in-depth as far as specifics, but it's a look at your whole system, 30,000-foot view. Sometimes water development will also do a level 2 study, which is more of a ground level view, looking at, maybe if there's some questions on alternatives or things like that. Sometimes I think that maybe even they drill some wells as part of level 2s, and establish some things to move forward to the level 3. Level 3 in their world is the design and construction of whatever the improvement might be there. So we have Bern Hinckley on here with us with Hinckley Consulting. He's a hydrogeologist that helps us look at, we're doing this level 1 master plan where you're using wells, and that's his specialty, and he's done previous reports here for Alpine as well, other water development studies. So we'll have him discuss that part when we get to it as well. Okay, I got to figure out how I'm going to do both of these at the same time. So first, a little history. So as we started this report, we looked at the past reports and kind of collected data from wherever we could get it, and it kind of gave us a picture of the Alpine water system from the beginning. So the system was basically started in the early 70s. There was an Alpine water and sewer district that was formed. It used the spring south of town here originally was the source of water. And a few years later, in 1977, I think there was a drought or something that the springs had kind of dropped, and so they ended up drilling a well to go along with that to help provide water. A decade or so more later, another well was drilled, and that was right before the town was incorporated in 1989. So yeah, started out as a district, and then it's moved into the town. There's been some different water development studies and projects over the years, and I might be missing some here, but there were the tanks on the south side here. There's an upper and a lower tank that were constructed, and that created a pressure zone up on the hill. That was done in 1996. That was a water development project that helped pay for that, for those tanks. Moving on a couple more years, there was the issue with the springs apparently. Yeah, okay, I won't mention it then. But the springs were removed from the system, and so then later on a third well was drilled in 2008, which is roughly the same location of the previous two. As we get into more modern history, in more recent years, the North Star utility system, which was constructed and built on the north side of the river, that was taken over by the town. That sounds like takeover by the town, but took over.
We acquired it.
Acquired it and assumed operations
Yep.
in 2015, and so that was a large, milestone in the system of the town here. And then the mega well was obtained in 2018 as well. So, like I said, we collected a lot of this data, and that's all in the report in better form than what I'm spitting it out here. And past projects and things like that just kind of give an idea. The past reports had a lot of that. I took things I thought were relevant and put them in there, but anyway, a good history there was learned for that. Yeah, let's go to the next one. So after kind of looking at the overview of the town and the system, we did an inventory and evaluation for everything in the water system. So the first part we'll talk about are the sources that you have. So just a brief, we'll talk about these more in depth with Byrne later, but just a brief overview of the sources that the town has. There are the 3 Alpine wells that are here south of town near the Grays River Road, basically just on the forest is where those 3 wells are. And that is what is serving the town, all of the town's water needs right now are those 3 wells. The town does own 3 additional wells, but they are not currently connected to the system. That are the 2 Flying Saddle wells, and then the mega well, which we call it the mega well. That name is stuck. I think it was Excel Development Number 1 was its real name. And I think it's going to be changing to Alpine Well Number 4 here in the future. So, but in our study, we called it the mega well. It was called that, I believe, when they test pumped it. They pumped it at 2,500 gallons per minute, and thus the mega well. So that's where that name came from. In looking at the sources and the wells for the town, Wyoming DEQ has some different regulations that you like to meet to kind of compare to where you sit. And the one regulation they have is if you take all of your wells and take the largest one out of service, let's say that there was a problem with it, that you can still meet your average daily demand. So that's the ADD. And you do meet that with your largest well out of service with those 3. And again, when I'm talking about that, it's just the 3 that are currently on the system. Now, another item that they have is if your sources and your storage together, can those meet twice your maximum day demand? And you do not meet that. Okay. Twice the maximum day demand, and that is your sources and your storage combined. So basically like your gallons per day of source and your gallons of storage. How does that compare to that max day demand? Times 2.
Plus your storage.
Should be
Daily maximum times 2.
correct. And it did not meet that. And so that can be either a combination of storage and source to bring that up to meet that. And that meets what, your experience has been in the summer when it is your max day. You're struggling to provide water, to provide enough water to everybody. So that that rings true when you go through that.
And just to be clear, that is wells 1, 2, and 3 that we're talking about.
Correct, because those are the only ones connected to the system. Right.
Thank you.
I guess a little more background too. Currently of those 3 sources, or of your sources, they're all south of the river. There's no connected source north of the river. I know you had that water break here a couple weeks ago. The location of that right next to the well house basically made it so you had to disconnect all the wells from the system until that was fixed. And so that was an issue, and it presented itself, and I mean, that was, we all know what happened with that.
We think it helps prove our point too.
I agree, yes.
Yeah.
It made that point very clear
Yep.
that, yes, there are 3 sources there, and yes, they provide however many gallons per minute, but where they all come through the same well house, one thing can.
And that's the second time that's happened since I've been here.
Okay.
So I think it highlights that bringing in the mega well, or whatever we want to call it, is, I feel like you're going to come to that conclusion, that how important it is.
Right. One other item with those two, the three wells, the three Alpine wells are not currently operating at capacity. They've had some issues with some fault or trip with we think it's the VFD. We tried to recreate that a little bit and couldn't get it to trip, of course. It's like taking your car to the shop and it works fine. But they are not operating at 100% right now either. So anyway, I'll throw that into the mix as well with the sources.
And Ryan, what is the capacity of 1, 2, and 3 respectively?
Oh,
It's in the report.
it's in the report.
It's in the
Yeah,
report, okay,
I want to
that's
say, and there's water rights, and then there are what the pump will produce. I think correct me if
Should
I'm,
be able to get about 1,500 gallon a minute out of those 3 wells.
out of all three combined. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think right now, it was like 450-ish, and 350-ish. So 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, so you're 10%, 20% short of full capacity there.
So there is he said,
Do you mind turning on your mic, Robert?
he said the word VFD. That's a variable frequency drive. That means that you can literally go in and turn down the speed of the well. And so right now they're set at 52,
52 hertz.
50,
But yeah,
55?
he's since
Okay.
has raised them, but when we were doing all our numbers, it was 52.
The max is 60. And when you go to the max, there's a potential that you're going to trip something electrically. So that's why they're set at 55. So they're operating just a little bit less than they could be at full speed.
So, well 3 was tripping at 55, so
Oh.
we bumped it down to 52.
Oh, okay.
And then with our experiment, we
We-
decided to bump it back up to 55, and it hasn't tripped.
Like I said, we tried to kind of recreate it so we could see what it's doing and what might need to be upgraded, and we couldn't get it to trip.
Still
It's been
haven't.
running, boy, when did you do that?
That was,
Over a month ago.
oh yeah.
Yeah, a month, 6 weeks ago maybe, so. Okay, so we did an inventory and an evaluation of the sources, but then we have a whole other section on the sources as well, so that we'll talk about later. Okay, the next thing we looked at in our evaluation, inventory and evaluation, is the storage that you have. So you have 3 storage tanks, the 2 on the south side of the river we talked about. Cleverly they're called the lower tank and the upper tank, right? So the upper tank is 250,000 gallons, and that serves basically the people up on the hill. There's an upper pressure zone there, and there's a booster pump that feeds it. It really just feeds those people up on the hill, that upper pressure zone. The way it's set up right now, it's disconnected. The PRV is basically shut off.
Yeah, I got the valve shut.
Yeah, so it does not drain water from the upper zone into the lower right now, the way it's set
Right.
up. But then we have the 500,000 gallon tank, which is the lower tank. That serves basically all of the main part of town. The North Star tank, which was obtained, when North Star system was brought into the system, it's north of the river. It is the same elevation essentially as your lower tank. So they were made to operate, in conjunction with each other. That said, there's quite a distance between them, and you can see that your largest tank here, 543,000 gallons, is the North Star tank, but most of your use, probably 2/3 or more of your use, is on this side of the river, of the Snake River. So, adding all the numbers up for storage tells you one picture, but then where they're located, that causes a little bit of issue there too. So, yes, you had the largest tank serving, 1/3 of the demand or so over there. But it does work in concert with the lower tank over here as well. The 2 tanks here on the south are concrete tanks. They're in good shape. The North Star tank on the north of the river is a glass fused to steel tank, and that's a good tank as well. And they're all in pretty good shape. So.
What is the other tank
Do what?
That's somebody else's.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the other water district.
Yeah, the North Alpine. I think it's
Improvement
called.
Service District.
Right. Yeah, they have their own system over there. But the glass fused the steel tanks they're really good tanks too.
Good.
So they're, yeah, let's go to the next one. We looked at, those are kind of the main pieces. We did look at a lot of other pieces though with this inventory and evaluation. The treatment that you have, you just have the sodium hypochlorite system with your wells, or you can inject that into the system to put chlorine into the system. And it's a simple system, and it's working well. We looked at the different transmission lines that you have. You know, there's from the tanks and the wells into town, there's 8 and 10-inch lines that can kind of get water to where the demand is. The 12-inch line is across the bridge. And then also from the North Star tank down, there's quite a bit of 12-inch line there as well to kind of feed that portion of it. Looked at distribution. I mean, we have some records on, you know, some in the last 30 years of pipes that have been replaced, you know, projects that have been done. But you know, we have where the distribution system is, but there are still some unknowns as far as how old all the pipes are. I mean, that's, unless you dig them up, there's really no way to know on some of that. You do have a SCADA system, supervisory control and data acquisition. And so that system basically looks at your wells. It basically provides data to Craig. It shows when the wells are running. It provides tank levels for your tanks, but it's not connected to the North Star tank, but the other two on this side. So he can look at that and kind of see what's going on with the system. Let's see here. We did also look at the system management. We looked at the meters. You know, I know you guys have talked about this a lot recently, where you're doing a meter project. But here on the south side of the river, you know, everyone has their service meters at their house, and they have to be read manually. And all the meters on the south side of the river are read annually. So we don't have a lot of data. It's just a once a year, you know. So it's when we're talking about max day, we're making some assumptions based on some other things. But the meters on the north side were a little newer. They still have to be read manually, but I believe those are read monthly. So there's some data there. And then the biggest problem probably was the mainline meters. So we have the meter in the well house and the booster pump, and those basically aren't functioning. They're kind of just giving garbage data, you know. And so the SCADA information that was collected for those meters, it's just like a scatter plot, basically. It's just all over the place. But those are being replaced as part of your meter replacement, and so you will have a lot more great data here in another year, I guess. You know,
Oh, yeah.
You know, once you start collecting it,
Yeah.
you know, next year, next fall, you'll have a year's worth of data to look at. We also did the GIS. You know, the town does not have a GIS, geographic information system, which is kind of a map-based. You can put all your facilities on there and keep track of it. We went and did some GPS points for all the fire hydrants and the valves, and then brought in the pipelines as well, the best we could for that. So there's kind of a start of a GIS system for that.
Just to clarify, we have a GIS now that was developed through MAP,
Okay.
right? So we're starting to use that, but it would be nice to use your data and upload it into our GIS
Right.
or cross-reference.
Right.
So
Agree.
we should definitely make sure we do that, Craig.
Yep, that's the plan.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, as we continue with this inventory and evaluation, one item that Craig was concerned about is the crossing over the bridge, the Snake River. As part of the funding for this project, there was a discretionary task. So Water Development puts a piece of money in a discretionary task, and if things come up during the study that they think, yeah, let's spend the money and let's look into that. So that was one of the items that part of that discretionary task money was used for, was to evaluate the pipeline on the bridge. So what we decided to do, I mean, we talked about different things. I mean, we could shut the pipeline off and then run a camera through it, and those seem to be a little too aggressive maybe to do that. The pipeline's about 10 years old, so we did bring a drone in and flew around, and we have a lot of pictures and videos along the entire length of the crossing. There's a pipeline, the 12-inch pipe, and then I can't remember how big the sewer is. It might be a 6, but they're insulated and inside another case. So the pipe you see out there is just a casing that's on the outside of the insulation. So there was no, just with the visual that we did, there was no issues, no damage, no leaks that we could see or anything like that. We also did look at, there's a heat trace system that was constructed as part of that, you can't let that freeze. That would be bad news. So there is a system in place to keep that from freezing. We did look at that and kind of evaluated what was there, and we went and dug up the manuals for it, so you can have that to see what the different lights mean on those, So anyway,
That seems like a very important piece to the puzzle. So we've confirmed it's only 10 years old, like it was installed with the other pipe.
Right.
Yeah, that seems like something that, like in the winter especially,
right.
on a
So
daily basis, we're checking that, I'm sure.
right, and so we have some recommendations in there that, in the fall, you want to go make sure everything's working right. And again, it's kind of a hands-off system. You really can't see it. It's in a conduit in with the pipe in the insulation. So, but you can see the controller units, I guess there's 2 of them.
Can you use like a thermal camera or something like that to make sure it's working?
I don't know where it's all insulated like that. That might be hard. But it does, it has a handful of different types of codes that, it's on, but it's not heating.
Mm-hmm.
It's on and it's heating, and it has, there's like a, and this wasn't me, it was our electrical guy that did all this stuff. So, is it calling for heat and not getting it? There's a handful of different codes there that the lights are different colors and they flash or whatever.
And Craig, is that a manual thing, or do you get like?
It's not hooked up to SCADA, so
It is not. I think he said in there it could be, and I don't know if it was SCADA or if it was just like an auto dialer or what that could be hooked up to it. But I think there are connections there it could be possible.
That sounds like a capital improvement project that we should
Give you an
probably
alarm or
add.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What then was the work, because they just replaced all that, I thought, like 6 years ago, on a grant that we got to redo the bridge. I thought that was all the water main and then putting in the heat.
Not 6 years ago.
6 or at most 8.
It said
We had a
it was
water-
originally constructed about 10 years ago.
No, this would have been sooner than that, because I remember we had a main break and then we got a grant for it, and they were working on the bridge. I don't know.
I don't know, that was a rendezvous project that put that in.
Yeah.
That basically connected the North Star system to the town.
Right, and this would have been right after, maybe a year or 2 after we took over North Star.
Yeah, this was after.
Okay.
Yeah, because originally it
Has
was
it been 10?
connected. It's been 10 years. And that was just the original, that was the original connection. Yeah, there was nothing before that.
Yeah.
The water systems were sewer
Huh.
not connected, so.
Damn it.
Time flies, Jeremy.
The realization, anyway, sorry. Anyway, so that was included at the request of the town to do that. Okay, all right, so after this inventory and evaluation, the next piece that we did was the hydraulic model. So we have a GIS-based software called AquaTwin. You take all the pipes, you put all the data in, and create a model of the water system of that network. And then we look at the existing system. We do some calibration to make sure things are fitting. We went out and did some flow testing at some hydrants, and how do the pressures, how do the flows compare to what the model is, and adjust from there. And then once you get that model in place, and it has your tanks and wells and everything, then you can make changes and then see what first in the existing system, you can kind of see if there are any problem areas. Do you have pipes where it's like high velocity during a fire event, or something that's just maybe that's a bottleneck area. and see if there are any issues there. And then you can, okay, if this pipe seems, you know, it has high velocity, what if we make it a 10-inch or a 12-inch? You can just do that and run the model and see what difference it makes there. So that's what we did. You know, upsizing pipes, increasing the pump capacities, adding that mega well, what's that going to do to your system, and adding storage. You know, they can run this on an extended time to kind of see what it does day after day, you know, assuming, you know, peak days in the summer, that sort of things. So,
Not knowing our actual data.
right, right. Can't remember where I talk about this. I think a little later I talked about kind of where we got those numbers. It is based on your data. It just wasn't the service meter data.
Got it.
So. Okay, we finally get to the part where you can listen to somebody else for a minute. So there was an in-depth study done on the water sources, and in particular the mega well, to see how that might work in the system and what its true capacity might be. So, Bern, are you ready to jump in?
Yeah, can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Okay, and then, Brian, do you have a cursor?
Yes, yes, I do.
You point to stuff on here?
I do, yes.
Okay, so, yeah, go back one, and then I'll trust you to point to what I'm talking about rather than me trying to describe it in narrative. So, all right, you can be the lady who turns the paddles around at the game show.
You bet. I'll be Vanna.
Okay, so yeah, history, that was good to go through that. And one thing I would add to that is that because so much work has been done with the Alpine system, and much of it has been done through public funding, there are a pile of reports out there. So those of you who are interested, just the reference section of this master plan might be of interest to you, because we tried to go back through and sweep up reports over the last, almost 30 years that are in various files and are available from Ryan if you don't have those handy. So those are the wells. Let's skip to the geology map. I think it's 2 slides down. Next one.
You want me to point out here a little bit, just in case they're not sure where the wells are? So if you can see the cursor here. So down here at the bottom near Grays River Road, that's where the 3 Alpine wells are. And then over at the Flying Saddle is where the 2 Flying Saddle wells are. And then up here to the north end is where the mega well is, right in that area. Okay, I'll go to the next one now.
That's interesting. You can see the cursor running there, so I'll trust you to be in the right place.
Oh, okay.
So here's the geologic version of the diagram you just saw. And so you see the mega well at the upper left and the Flying Saddle wells and the Alpine wells. They're all out on this alluvial terrace in that light brown color, which is just the gravels and sands that have been deposited by those 3 rivers over the last, probably 100,000 years. They're actually in different materials at the bottom of the wells. The 3 at the south end are into the limestones that make the highlands off to the east. Those colored stripes all dip in under the town and under that whole terrace. So those 3 wells are down into the deeper aquifer in the limestones. The Flying Saddle wells are mostly in these shallow alluvial materials, and then the mega well is entirely in the recent unconsolidated loose sands and gravels and clays that are forming that terrace on the north side. And then there's this big fault zone that runs along the east side of town, and that runs all the way down, forms the east side of Star Valley to the south. So the geology is quite complex, and you do see that in the wells themselves. As Ryan indicated, let's go to that next slide. The mega well was a major item of interest. It is now officially Alpine well number 4. The permitting work's been done on that, and so you have a municipal water right to that hole as Alpine number 4. It is, as Ryan indicated, it was originally tested 2,500 gallons a minute, and then there was a later test subsequently to that. But before we wanted to commit to bringing that into the municipal system and putting a lot of money into it, but there were some concerns about those tests and whether they were actually as generous as they seemed. So here you see the layout for the test we did last year. A couple of key points, starting at the bottom of the slide, that discharge point. And the earlier tests were done where the bag oil was just pumped out onto the ground and that immediately soaked in. As I'm sure all of you know, you pour water on the ground there in Alpine and it disappears. So that we tried to get as far away from the well as we could before we turned the water loose on the surface, so we wouldn't simply be recycling our own water. And you could pump a kid's swimming pool at 1,000 gallons a minute if you put all the water right back into the swimming pool. So that was a key thing to be concerned about. And then the other was how widespread is the pocket of highly permeable material into which the mega well is drilled. And that's where those two yellow dots come in. We were able to get permission from the owners of those wells, now offset from the main well, and look at what the impacts of pumping the big well were at different distances, which then gives you some idea of not just what's right there, but whether that aquifer that the mega well has tapped has some legs under it. And we were able to collect some very fine-grained data from the Cinder well and that Air Park well at those different distances to elucidate the geology. So I was real tickled with the way that test came together, and we were able to pump it at 400 gallons a minute for most of 5 days.
And I'll say, Bern, that the 400 gallons a minute was basically what the current existing pump would produce. So we were pretty much maxing out what was there.
We don't know officially what it'll pump at this point, what the well will produce.
No, I mean, that one can project that with some careful data. I mean, basically, in an ideal situation, and the world's never that ideal, but it can come pretty close. If you can produce, say, 500 gallons a minute by drawing your well down a foot, you can produce 1,000 gallons a minute by drawing it down 2 feet, 2,000 gallons a minute by drawing it down 4 feet. That's ideally a linear relationship, but within reason. So we only drew the well down 2+ feet. We were able to measure it with sufficient precision to see inches of drawdown, both in the well itself and in those observation wells. So, while we did not see 2,000 gallon a minute come out of the ground, we can quite confidently predict that you could get that. In fact, if you had a big enough pump and a big enough well, you could produce that at probably 5,000 gallons a minute under ideal circumstances. So that's the power of a carefully instrumented test, is that you can see the hydraulics of the situation and then project those to those higher volumes. So that said, I don't have any concerns at all that well can produce that 2,500 gallons a minute on a short-term basis. Now we did, because we were able to make sure that we weren't recycling our own water, which may have happened in that 2,500 gallon a minute initial test, but we got away from that, and so can say, and then we're able to see as the drawdown spread away from the well over those 4.5 days, we could see it hit what you call boundaries. So it reached out. You guys can't see me waving my hands. It reached out to where this gravel pocket that well is in thinned out, and it is in a lens or a channel of particularly favorable material. So it is a sweet spot that was identified and tapped by that well. But there again, we need to have some feel for how extensive that sweet spot is before we commit the resources to bringing that into the municipal system. And I think our test, while it did show that those other areas aren't as productive as where the mega well was tapped, they're sufficiently productive to give it quite a long, generous set of legs, we might call it. So what do we call it? The sweet spot in the aquifer. So, the mega well name was well deserved. The other thing we saw in this, that I guess we'll get to that maybe on the next slide, is how much the water level in the aquifer changes. Okay, and this is just a schematic cartoon of of that, but this was something that was not appreciated heretofore. And one of the reasons that mega well was considered to be so extravagantly productive is they tested it initially at a time when it was only 26 feet to water. And the dotted line on my diagram there is when the water level in the aquifer is high, but that's a function of Palisades Reservoir. So what's basically going on in this area is you're getting recharge into the aquifers in the uplands south and east, and then that water runs down through the aquifers and into the rivers or into Palisades Reservoir. So if you ran it in a steady state situation, you'd have a nice groundwater gradient coming off the hills and running down to the reservoir. But now the reservoir that the water's running into is moving up and down, so the water level in the aquifer is responding to that. And when we were doing the studies 15 years ago or so and talking to a lot of domestic well owners out there, they described times when their wells would go dry. So again, we don't know the exact geometry, but in my cartoon here, I've put the mega well in a deeper piece area of the alluvium. Probably that was an old river channel that carved that terrace into the Salt Lake Formation, and then the sands and gravels were deposited on top of that. So all of the wells on that north side are going to be sensitive to the water level in the reservoir, and if they aren't in one of these sweeter spots, their productivity is much reduced and may even go dry. As you can see the way we've drawn that, the mega well actually penetrates down into the Salt Lake Formation. I think it went another 40 feet or so, and that was unproductive. It's all fine-grained, silty, clay-rich material. So the mega well found the bottom of the local sweet spot and went past that, and then the bottom part of that well was just thrown away because it was unproductive. But that means that the well is sensitive to water levels, and the productivity of the well is sensitive to what's going on over the reservoir, which is not ideal. It looks like you've got some freeboard to work with there. But again, that was an important aspect of future management of that mega well. Moving to the next figure, and these are all figures from the report, incidentally, so if you want to see all the gory details, you can find them there. Some of these, I don't know how visible they are and where you guys are sitting, but there's a lot of information here that I would point out to you. For example, Palisades Reservoir, the two blue lines, the reservoir water level varies by 120 feet, which when you're talking aquifers, in wells that are 50, 80, 100 feet deep, that's a pretty alarming situation. What I've diagrammed here is in green are the variations in measured static water levels, so just where the thing sits when nobody's pumping it, and then in red are the pumping water levels. So as you can see in the mega well, the pumping water levels are not much deeper than the static water levels, meaning it produces a lot of water without drawing it down very far. But sometimes you're starting that static water level fairly deep. The top of that green arrow on the mega well is where the well was initially drilled, initially tested, and that it was built around that water level. So the crosshatch material is where the screens are open to that well, and the folks who built it thought they were quite safe in putting the screen in that location because they were well below the water table. What wasn't understood is that the water table varies a lot. When we were in there last December, as per that 390 annotation, our starting water level, no pumping of the well, was well down into the open area, into the screens in the well. If that had been known when the well was built, the screens would have been set only in that deeper section. The other thing that you see on this diagram is the hydraulic control on the wells isn't necessarily the reservoir, it's the reservoir level or the river, whichever comes first, because the water level that the well sees is the water level adjacent to the well, which in many cases is the river. So in the case of the Flying Saddle, you don't draw those wells down very far before the water levels are equal with the river, and then the aquifer water levels can't go any deeper than that. So then you're spared whether the reservoir on downstream goes on to lower and lower elevations doesn't matter to you. Same thing on the far left side of the diagram. The 1, 2, 3 wells on the north side, while they are pumping at levels below the level of the reservoir, oftentimes, they're only seeing the river. That's as low as the adjacent aquifer can get is the river, and at that point then water starts flowing through the aquifer from the river into the wells. Look at the mega well, however, and whether you're looking at the level in Palisades Reservoir or in the Snake River adjacent to the mega well, that level is lower than the opened, the part of the well that's receiving water, and that's the cross-hatched part of it. So what that tells you is the Palisades Reservoir, we're down in the very lowest levels, despite the fact that the river would still be flowing. If the groundwater levels dropped to the river level, there would be no water in the mega well. So again, a word of caution. The next slide shows some of the specific data on that issue. So in the upper left, you see the long-term history of the last 20 years or 10 years of the
messed it up.
Palisades River. Go ahead.
I messed it up a little bit.
Oh. Okay.
I was trying to get to the top of those graphs.
It may not show it over the,
Oh, okay.
but we get the.
Yeah, it's cutting off a little bit at the
Yeah.
top there, so.
Oh, okay. I'm seeing the figure clearly.
Okay.
So you're at that one in the upper left. Can we not see that?
We can see the graph, just not the very top of
Okay.
it, so.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's 2016 to 2024 elevations of Palisades Reservoir, and then superposed on that, the base of the aquifer is there at 5540, and the river channel just west of the mega well is there at 5520. Now, in most years, they don't draw that reservoir level down below, well, what is that, 5570 or so. And then the orange dots, we have just scattered data on the mega well itself, but it tracks somewhat with the reservoir. And the moral of the story in that upper left figure is that 3 years out of those, the 10 there, they have drawn the reservoir down into those quite low elevations. And probably some of you have seen it when there is no reservoir running around Alpine. And those are the times when the aquifer may be most in peril. In the upper right piece of that figure are the more detailed data that we collected just over the winter. And again, you can see as the reservoir goes down, the water levels in the aquifer go down. As you'd expect, there's a lag effect. The well doesn't see the reservoir, in this case, for a couple of months. And then the reservoir starts to come up, and then eventually the well, aquifer in the vicinity of the well sees that, and the water level in the well comes up. The bottom one is an extreme example of that. I just extracted from the water levels in the reservoir from 2017. So there, interestingly, it suggests that the groundwater flow was probably out of the reservoir into the aquifer there for the several months before that September 2, 2017 measurement was taken. So that has implications not only for water levels, but for the water quality in the aquifer, in that it is not, the groundwater isn't just uniformly flowing through the aquifer on down the hill and into the river. At certain times, the river's coming up, particularly with the reservoir, and backing water into the aquifer. So that again is a kind of a unique characteristic of the mega well, and one that one wants to keep an eye on. Okay, I think that's, if anybody's got any questions, holler out here, but that's the story that we developed on the mega well. The conclusion of which, of course, is that it isn't as productive as originally thought, because sometimes it has a lot more water to work with than other times. But as long as the reservoir doesn't drop too low, the mega well is still an extremely productive well, far more productive than any of the others. So it should definitely be added to the Alpine system as soon as possible. But we'll want to watch the water levels in that well pretty carefully. And if a bigger pump is put in, which would be recommended, something in the 1,000, 1,500 gallon minute range, it should probably be also equipped with real-time water level monitoring, so you can keep track of what it's doing. The crunch time, of course, is going to be late in the summer when your neighbors in Idaho are demanding a lot of water to irrigate the potatoes and drop in the reservoir, and you're demanding a lot of water to water the green areas of Alpine and just keep the summer
Burn?
project going. That's what you'll want to be careful. Yes, go ahead.
This is Jeremy. Just looking over the data here, for us to keep track of it, the easiest way is looking at what BOR produces, and what they produce is a percentage of the lake being filled. I was wondering, in your research, so you give it by elevation, is there any correlation that elevation, say 5,600 feet, means the lake's at 70%? Because a quick and easy thing for us to look at lake levels is by going to the BOR website. And like I say, they list it as percentage of full. So if we can equate that percentage of full to elevation levels, that would be helpful.
It's my understanding that it's almost 1 foot for every percentage. So if it's down at the bottom, you said at the bottom's 120 feet down, that might be kind of a rough guess.
What it is?
But like, when you see it go down 10% when you're at the boat ramp, you can see it's down 10 feet
10
or
feet?
something in that range. So it would be interesting to take the same data and like reference that. So that's a great point, because we should know this is amazing information. This is astonishing that this is how it really works. It's very enlightening. But yeah, for us to know at the end of the summer when Alpine has, or the reservoir has like, it's around 50% or whatever, it's likely the mega well is not going to produce. I hope that's what this is saying, right? The mega well is unlikely to produce what we need it to produce when it's down low.
Well, when it's down in those, like the three low spots on my graph there, those would be something that would be deeply concerning. The mega well is sufficiently productive that it doesn't need to be full of water to produce. I think we were suggesting a 1,200 gallon minute well would be appropriate to that. And the only time and then set the pump deep in the well so that it can accommodate changes in aquifer water levels. And I don't know what the management strategies on the reservoir are, but it's those 3 years where it's clear down there below the bottom of the aquifer. Those would be the ones that would be of concern. I bet that mega well could continue to produce 1,200 gallons a minute if it was only, a third full of water, to use that terminology.
Burn, one other,
The BOR data, elevation data are available in real time off their website, so we know exactly what it's doing day to day. The thing to do would be to have a companion understanding of just exactly a long-term version of my upper right diagram there, and get a real feel for just how quickly the mega well responds. And I think tracking those two both through a couple of seasons would be quite instructive, and let just what your exposure was.
Burn, this is Ryan. I was going to mention that there is some lag there. When the reservoir is at its bottom part, the aquifer isn't necessarily, but we don't, like Burn saying, we don't have a great picture of that. You probably need a couple years of data.
So we might run out of water, say, in December
or
in August or something.
Which isn't your peak demand time.
Our peak demand's in August, but yes,
Right.
we might be fine in December, is what you're saying.
Yeah, that lag, to me, that kind of is a little bit of a buffer there. Yeah.
This study just wasn't long enough to really explore that relationship, and it certainly isn't one for one. It isn't like the water level in the Palisades goes down 20 feet and the water level drops 20 feet in the well. It's going to be a lagged response and a much subdued response. as you can see in that upper right-hand corner, the divot in the water level at the Palisades version was, what, 25 feet, and over that same period of time, we saw the mega well drop, 15. So, yeah, I mean, it's, as I say, it's a lagged and dampened response, but a better understanding of that, particularly late in the season, would be the kind of thing you want to develop.
Yep.
And to say, this was somewhat surprising, but this is why we really focused in on the mega well, to not just blithely, you drill the well, it makes a bunch of water, or you start laying pipe. We really want to know what you've got exactly. All right, moving on from the mega well, and I hope that, yeah, Craig should be able to then draw that diagram over 2 or 3 cycles and get a real feel for it. The other thing we were able to do on a more granular level, it wasn't all 30,000 feet, to use Ryan's term, is we looked at the performance of the 3 existing wells relative to what their pumps should be producing. So this is a standard pump curve that tells you how many gallons per minute you should get against how much pressure, how high you're lifting the water out of the well, and what pressure you're shoving it into your tanks with. Well 2 is up there in the right ballpark for what that pump should be doing. Well 3 was conspicuously poorly performing, and so Lonnie approved spending the last of the money to go ahead and pull that pump out. Now we're talking the aquifer, the well, we're talking about just the pump itself, and indeed found those impellers were quite worn, and so you're on track to replace the pump in Alpine number 3, and that will move that point well over to the right, and should be able to recover 150, perhaps 200 gallons a minute of flow from well 3, and that's something, of course, that you can do immediately. It was just a matter of the lag time of getting a new pump in there. So that will help you out this summer, long before you're able to get the mega well put in. But again, it's the kind of thing of, if you look at these, at the pumps and the drawdowns and the flows with care, you can tease out some of these quite interesting issues and then propose but in this case, I think it will turn out to be a real useful solution. So there's the first answer to get more water out of your system.
I'll throw into there too, Bern.
Go ahead.
That you were able to pull the pump and investigate it and put it back in, basically on the state's dime. That was covered under the study to do that.
And we appreciate that.
Yeah, they weren't going to buy the well for you because that's really not or the pump. Sorry, that's not a part of the study, and there wasn't enough money in there to do
We'll figure out
that
a way
anyway.
to get some money from them one way or
But
another.
it was very helpful to get that information. So.
We were hired to do the investigation, and the investigation in this case included pulling the pump out. It was about a $6,000 project, so no, that was pretty sweet that was able to get rolled into the Lonnie's master plan, and then it'll be on the town's dime to put the new pump in. So one more thought, and I'll let this go, and this is wellhead protection water quality. I don't know if any of you watched it when we did that test, but we put 400 gallon minute out there on the ground for those 4.5 days, and we didn't make a puddle much bigger than the room that you're sitting in, which tells you how fast water soaks in. As I'm sure Greg can tell you, you could have a 200 gallon minute leak in this system anywhere and you'd never see it. From a water quality point of view, what that says is anything that gets spilled is just gone. Now, you can't strictly limit land use on the entire area like you would if you were drawing. Typically, a community will have these wellhead protection zones around the wells that define travel times, 1 year, 2 year, 5 year travel times. This whole aquifer is just wide open, and so anything that can be done to emergency response if there's a contamination event and remove potentially conflicting land uses from the wells as far as you can. In the case of the mega well, we took the opportunity of pumping it long and hard to measure nitrates and chloride, two of the things that one sees in septic system effluent, to see if those changed at all over the several million gallons that we pumped. We did not see any change at all in those particular parameters. Now, again, we didn't pump it forever and ever and ever, but at least the initial indication there was pretty good that that as the groundwater, if you reached out from the well and produced groundwater from the surrounding area, it was not, in that case, picking up anything problematic. The one thing that you might see over there would be the influence of septic tanks. It's good that most of that's now on central sewer, but it goes back to that relationship with the reservoir. There are times of the year when the groundwater flow beneath the aquifer there is stagnant or even reversed. So it isn't a nice clean picture of all the water just continually flushing the system from east to west. There are going to be periods when anything that's going into that groundwater is just piling up because it's got nowhere to go because Palisades Reservoir has come up. So just another thing to keep in mind, low densities if they're going on individual septics, and then the central sewer system was absolutely critical to maintaining the quality of that aquifer.
So, Bert, I have a quick question for you. This is Eric. On the main wells that we have are kind of isolated from that possibility, but the mega well is definitely a concern from that standpoint that we get septics that are upstream, but it's only the upstream, correct? It's only to the northeast?
Well, that's what he's saying is upstream varies.
Oh, okay.
Upstream changes over
Oh,
there.
okay. So whether the lake's up or down, and so, okay, so that's a problem because we have plenty of septics all around the mega well, and that seems like that's a real issue that we can't protect it.
Other than expanding the sewer system.
Right.
Bingo. That's my point.
Yeah.
No, expanding
No.
the central sewer system would be a good move. And then there's a lot of dilution. Again, it's a very, very productive aquifer, so I don't mean to be waving the flag unnecessarily, but it would be something you'd want to keep real close track of. And if there was just any hint at all that well was seeing influence from those surrounding areas, that would say you need to extend
Well,
the sewer system.
case in point, all the areas that,
times of year when it's all just stagnant, when all that groundwater is just sitting there because it can't flow on into the Palisades because the Palisades Reservoir is high, and your downstream changes over the course of the season is the
Okay.
weird part.
so the area around the mega well, which is around 30 acres right there, is being annexed in, or they're hopefully going to be coming in, but that's another major reason. To do their development, they need to be hooked up to our sewer and water, that's for
Right,
sure.
And it's right there.
Exactly. And so, but yeah, as much as we can get on that side of as much as we could get on the water and sewer system near the mega well, the better for the long-term success of that.
True.
Okay.
And I would say
Yeah,
too, like,
and as you come to rely on that well more and more.
Right.
Now, those guys in those very old subdivisions way off to the west there on the point, it would be extraordinary to draw that water clear back to the mega well, but those guys just to the west, I think it's going to see their influence
Okay.
in those times of year when the water's flowing from west to east rather than the normal east to west.
and again, the testing that you did, Burn, for the nitrates, they were quite low, I believe, so.
Yeah, they were
Nothing showed up
Yeah,
yet at this
there's-
point.
Yeah, you're not anywhere near out of compliance there. We just wanted to track those to see if we saw any hiccup at all, and did not.
Well, and when we get it tied into our system, it's going to have to be chlorinated. So that would help with any nitrates and things of that nature, right? Or no?
Nitrate's a different animal.
Okay.
It's just
Yeah.
for pathogens. No, nitrate is a conservative. The only way to get rid of nitrates is reverse osmosis, basically. So no, you're
And there's an allowable
A level.
EPA level, yeah, it's 10 milligrams per liter and I mean, I can't remember what the testing result was, Bern, but it was pretty low, if I remember right. I mean, and like Bern was saying, there's a lot of dilution with that too, so, but that's something that could be tracked over time.
Yeah, maybe we're paid to think up problems, to anticipate it. So I don't want to make too much of that, but it would say, from a land use point of view, and if there are opportunities to bring people on to sewer, and now that,
Yeah.
I don't know what else, the city boundaries, you can, I don't know what your codes are with respect to requiring people to come on to city sewer if they get annexed.
Yeah, their test
And
results.
while you've been deprived of the old donut of actual review over subdivisions within a mile of city boundaries, the state law still requires anybody within a mile to get at least consultation with the city before they start building small lot subdivisions.
That's an interesting point. So has the county done, do we know that the county does that? If it's within a mile of the town of Alpine, are they actually doing a study?
I don't believe so.
Okay. So I think we need to.
There used to be a state statute where if you were within a mile of the town boundary, you had to get the town to sign, and that statute was eliminated a number of years ago. So I was just going to say the nitrate testing, that the highest level was 0.37, and the EPA maximum level is 10. So well under one. So we didn't see any red flag there or anything, but.
The dilution is huge, and of course, I mean, people talk about the 10 as you don't want to come anywhere as close to 10. 10 means that they condemn your water supply and you're not allowed to drink it. So,
Right.
If you saw those nitrate levels coming up to 5, that would be extremely alarming. So yeah, while 10 is the limit, it's nice to be below it. Any indication of elevated contaminants should be worthy of attention. And we don't see that now. I mean, Brian's absolutely right. There's no indication of any elevated concentrations at this point, but that well's never been sucked on long and hard. We pissed more water out of that than any of the previous tests by, gosh, I don't know, order.
All night long. I don't know about everybody else, but yeah, let's.
We can talk all night, I guess, yeah.
We don't want to keep everyone all night, but yeah.
Very long days.
Does anybody else have any other well questions? Now's a good time before we move on.
Well, here's an obvious question. What about Flying Saddle on those two wells? Are they big enough, interesting enough for the town of Alpine to put some effort into them?
Well, we have been used for years, since you inherited that system, those two wells along with the North Star. Craig was out there with us. We measured the output of those wells. One is about 100 and one's about 50. They're old. The 50 particularly was way less than it has produced in the past. I think their value would be if they could be brought back into the system inexpensively and quickly, they could add usefully to get you through until the mega well comes in. But the long-term value of those is probably not very much, just because they're old. The testing on them suggested some rehabilitation work would be appropriate. And those are so close to the river that they're have drawn interest from EPA and appropriately that if you pull on those line hard, you're just sucking in river water, which then has water quality issues. And they've been flagged for their water quality issues before. So I would say Flying Saddle's value to you are as a potential stopgap, but not as a significant contribution to your long-term water supply.
Okay, good answer.
And so was the mega well just not dug deep enough to go with this fluctuation?
No, that's just the geology of it.
Okay.
The geology is such that it's down into the underlying
Yeah,
layer.
but it's just.
It's dug plenty low from what it sounds like,
Yeah,
but it's just the water levels. Just,
yeah, that's just the way that nature is in that area, I guess, yeah. But again, how often does it get that low? You know, occasionally, but
What are the,
yeah.
with the mega well, with unlimited money and resources, what's the possibility of the mega well fills with water and we're able to pump it to storage for those times when the reservoir is low? Is that,
Well, the way the storage tanks work, I mean, you use enough water in a day or two to drain your tanks. So, yeah, I think it's,
makes sense? Okay.
yeah, it's more of a case of, has the reservoir dropped enough, early enough, that you're out of water at the mega well at the peak of the summer? Which, from what Vern's showing there, really not. I mean, I don't know what odds it are, Vern, but, I mean, I guess you have to look at a lot. We don't have the
If you
data,
drop
but.
that water level another 20 feet, and the mega well would still be very, very productive. So, again, I don't want to be alarmist about it. I don't, any reservation is all about bringing that mega well in, but a better understanding of it against the possibility that in those real low, rare years, and maybe it's worth talking to the Bureau and seeing what their strategy is. Maybe those were extraordinary conditions that dropped the water level that far, but my guess is going forward, water demands are only increasing, that it's more likely that they will be using the reservoir more aggressively rather than less aggressively, and just some understanding of what those real low reservoir levels mean.
Well, there was a change in administration at the BOR.
Right.
So,
right. I can't remember the other guy's name who ran that for decades.
So when it did have those really bottomed out, it went down to like 5% and it was just a river until you got up by the dam. And those dates are up there, but it happened in kind of consecutive years. And then you notice a shift where they bring it all the way up and they draw it down slowly. So they were focusing more on like American Falls and some of those to draw them down first. And then, us and Jackson Lake are some of the last to get drawn down. So we're very thankful for that. But I can't say that that's always going to be the case. I mean, if it's a dry year, of course, they're going to draw it down as much as they have to.
And it's almost like a multi-year, really, to
You see
draw
a
it down
trend
that
for
far.
sure.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah.
It sounds like their goal is to make more water storage. So their goal is to get more out of the Palisades, dirt and gravel wise, and make it more water storage.
That's a bureaucracy, like high level BOR. They want as much storage as they can get. The storage is in the reservoirs. So yeah, it's not just Palisades, but it's across, of course. What's that?
They're approving more excavation,
Oh.
I think, to accomplish that.
Yeah, we had a meeting with the BOR today, and they made the analogy that you skip a rock into the lake, that's less volume that they can put in there. It's like, oh my gosh. So that they want there to be mining operations and pull as much gravel out as possible, but that's their kind of theory.
but it would take a lot to have any
For sure.
dent in this, for sure,
Yeah.
what we're looking at. Yeah.
I think the key, one of the things that Vern said was, as you think about improvements to the mega well, it will be important to instrument the well so you can watch these trends. And that, I just want to point that out because that's not necessarily typical. You don't have that in your other wells. That's just an extra thing. And then you can start collecting data and we can understand what it really is. I think the takeaway is it's a great well. It should be added. We just need probably to monitor surface or static water level.
We also need the funding.
Yeah, and that's
Well,
what Lonnie's here for.
Yeah, Lonnie, yes.
I think that's fair, but this is a master plan. We're trying to look 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, so.
Well, it's
that was
perfect. And
our
the other thing I was going to mention is, I mean, the water, what's it called? The water plan that you have? It's the data that you were showing one of the earlier slides, the model, right? The water model.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. So we are going to have that, or that's being implemented, right? So we can use that. This is a tool that we thought we had back in the rendezvous days, but we didn't have. But now, once we have all this water model and the data, we can say, okay, someone wants to annex into the town. They're bringing this many units, and it'll, have this much drawdown. This is what their max
Where their demands
their
are.
demand is or
Yeah.
whatever. And so we actually have an intelligent conversation at that point about the effect of bringing someone in, whereas we never had that before. So the mega well getting tied in is going to be huge for the expansion of the town of Alpine in the future, for sure. And then who knows, in 20 years, we might have to drill another well to keep up with demand, whatever it is. But these are huge steps that we're taking to have the information that we need to make informed decisions.
Right.
You got 12 slides left.
Yeah.
One quick thing, Vern, can you hear me?
Vern, go to that microphone right there.
Vern, can you hear me? This is Kevin with Jorgensen.
What's that?
The state was concerned about where the screens were on Megawell. Do you have any concerns with that? The level of the screen? You mentioned it real quick going through it.
If someone's asking me, I didn't hear it.
Here, come back to this one.
Yeah. When we went through the state process, the state had some concerns about where the screens were on the Megawell. Do you have any concerns with that?
Well, yeah, you're gonna have that discussion with the, as I said earlier, if the well had been built knowing the changes in water levels, they would have set those screens lower. So, it's not designed the way DEQ would like it to be designed. Now, the concern is a small one, and maybe we're making much of small concerns. It's that once you draw the water level down into the screens, it does several things. One is it exposes the screens now alternately to air and water, which increases the potential of corrosion for your screens. It also encourages bacterial growth in the screens because now you're bathing them in water. They aren't just continually underwater, which is what you'd like to see. And the second thing is that then water can come into the well and then fall down the well bore. So it's called cascading water, and then it entrains air. That's, in this case, I don't have any concerns about. You would set your pump deep into the well so that any air that had gotten entrained by water falling into the well through those screens would have dissipated. The corrosion and bacterial growth problem is more something that people worry about than I've ever seen any serious data on. If DEQ were to just say, dig in their heels and say, we're not letting you bring that well in, you could block those off, would be your solution. You would rehab the well, that would cost you some money, but it would not be horrendous, and the well would still be perfectly useful. If you were to just blank off the top 20 feet of screens in that well, I don't think it would hurt the productivity of the well any, and would bring you into full design compliance. So, yeah, I can't speculate what DEQ will say, but it is correct that you are out of spec at the moment.
Should we consider if and when we do bring the mega well in to just implement that into the price and just make those changes? Is that an expensive proposition?
No, that would be very expensive. I gotta know what those budgets look like. I mean, right now, all you need to do is just put a bigger pump in the mega well. As part of the bigger, and I haven't looked at Ryan's data, or you're looking at upsizing all the piping associated with it. I had thought initially not, because you've got some pretty good piping coming out of that.
I think what you said, Vern.
$1,000.
Oh, sorry.
About what that rehab job would look like. It would be.
I cut him off.
It would be a project. You'd have to bring in a contractor that knew what they were doing. And squeeze those off or run a liner down. There'd be a couple ways to do it. But it would not be insubstantial cost. It might be appropriate to try to roll that into your next state funding package. Good question.
Like you said, it's kind of depends
I
on
don't think
DEQ.
it sacrifice a lot of productivity. I guess from my end of it, I would say we know enough about the well that you could give up those upper screens.
Like I said, Bernie, you said it's kind of a function of whether DEQ really pushes hard on that or not, which is, we really don't know right now, I guess.
DEQ, changes engineers about every 6 months these days, so I have no wisdom to offer on what your reaction would be, what the reaction would be.
So, Ryan, do you want to try to, let's go through the
Yes.
last
Okay, we'll
bit
keep
of this. We'll keep cruising.
Okay. So growth projections, that was the next piece that we had of this study. We looked at a number of different sources of data. U.S. Census population data was probably the key part of that. You know, they're showing that, 1,220 is in 2020 was the population of the town. There's also areas outside the town. So the census has a couple of areas they call, I think it's census designated places. There's 2 of them on the north side of Alpine. When we looked at that, we basically lumped all 3 of those together. Looking at that from over that decade, the 2010 to 2020, it was showing a 40% increase in that 10-year period. So that's 3.4% annual growth. And to compare that, the state of Wyoming saw a 2.3% increase. That's compared to the 40. That's not compared to the 3.4. So that's an overall decade.
And then
increase.
the 10 years previous to that, we were in the 40% range as well.
Okay.
So for the last 20 some odd years, we've been growing at that rate.
Okay. Lincoln County was about 8%, again, compared to the 40 over that.
Yep.
So, looking at population, you can see the explosive growth. We also looked at the service connections. We looked at the past studies to see how many service connections. A lot of the growth that the town has seen and in that number is areas that have been annexed in. So it's a little hard to just say, well, your population went from X to Y, you grew this much, when part of that was annexed in, so it's kind of done a different way. The service connections, and looking over about a 15-year, basically from that 2009 study up to now, it showed about a 1% annual growth in service connections. So that was, and again, that's a pretty big number. I mean, 1% doesn't sound like much, but that's pretty good growth for a place. So, there's been growth on both sides. When we looked at those service connections, there were, growth in the North Star portion. There was also a lot of growth on the south side too. So there's a lot of infill going on, and then, north side of the river is a little more open, and there's quite a bit of growth there. A lot of, I think post-COVID, we saw a big spike. There's dramatic growth when that happened. So that was something that was interesting too. And I guess I temper that a little bit because you do have some constraints around you as well. You've got Forest Service, you've got Bureau of Reclamation with the reservoir, you got game and fish lands. There are some restrictions on just sprawling out and continuing to grow like that. So, as far as projections, what do we use for our study, moving forward? This Wyoming Department of Administration and Information, they look at projections for all over the state of Wyoming. Their projection from 2020 to 2050, so a longer term, and they had a yearly basically, and it varied. But their average over that time was 0.81. And I don't think it ever got above 1%. I think the peak was about 1%. So we looked at that. Will you be able to continue that 3% annual growth over another 25 years? That, I guess to me it seemed unlikely to continue at that same rate, but you're definitely, continue to see growth.
I'm sorry to tell you, but as someone that knows boots on the ground in talking to developers, town of Alpine will be the largest town in Lincoln County in 20 years. And it will be impossible for you to forecast that with data that you get from the state or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, so, looking at bringing in 50 acres, that could be 1,500 people living there in that 50 acres if they got the density that they wanted, something in that range. So,
but again, that's something that you haven't seen yet. I mean, you do have some apartments.
we have to plan for
going
it,
up.
though.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
True.
Right.
I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
I guess there's kind of that balance, you don't want to plan for too much and then it never really pans out. I guess, so we used a 1% growth rate for this over
Yeah.
the next 20,
What'd that do?
basically over 30 years. And I guess if you grow faster, you'll just hit those numbers sooner.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so it's not the end of the world or anything, but, again, that's still a pretty aggressive rate. I guess we'll see what happens on that. I don't know, do you have any input on that, Lonnie?
Just so with that, I know that most of the state does grow about, I think you could conservatively say it's going to be about 0.5% year over year. And I think 1% would be a pretty good number just to have. And just with that, I know no one can, we don't have a crystal ball and we can't say what's going to happen. So I think the 1% was a conservative number where it was showing higher growth than the state was estimating, because their population projections, they do a pretty good way of doing it. They do a shift share analysis where they compare the population of the towns to the counties and they apply that growth rate. So they look at the previous years and just see how the town versus the county grew and compile that through a longer way. But I do think the 1% was probably it's a good one. I think you don't really want to overestimate it, then you'll oversize everything and your system won't be able to really function. But
Well,
so
that sounds familiar, doesn't it? We've already done that with our sewer plant that was put in. Yeah.
so it's just trying to yeah.
So there is you can't go too far.
Yeah, it's
There
trying to make it manageable but with that, this growth rate, I mean, we don't know what's going to actually happen. This is just kind of trying to project it out. So I think with that, as these major improvements come along, it's a nice thing to kind of take a step back and look at how your growth rate has been. Because it might, as we all know, we have booms and busts in Wyoming. I know Alpine currently is in quite the boom. And other places, though, have those booms for 10 or 20 years and they peter out. So it's just something to...
Their economies are also based on,
Yeah.
energy and stuff like that, but you never know.
Right, yeah, and you're in a different situation.
Yeah, exactly. It'll all change. So what is
Again.
1% annual growth over the next 30 years due to our population?
Oh, I've got that here.
Oh, I thought that was going to be a major part of the presentation.
What we're worried about is water.
Right, we're looking at demands.
What we want them to be.
Yeah.
That's 12 people a year. At some point, 13 people a year. Yeah, so.
So we were assuming, and this is again including the two census areas on the north here. The current day, basically in 2025, it's 1532, and out at 2050, we're at just under 2,000, basically. So yeah, I hear what you're saying. It could be more for sure. We're looking at service connections. You're at 663 right now. This would push you up to 850. And yeah, well, I think we'll look at demands here in just a second. Oh boy.
All right. We're trying to get.
Okay. So again, looking at projections and system demands. So we didn't really have good meter data. We talked about that before. We brought in our clamp-on meter and put that in the well house to see what the wells, each of the 3 wells were producing. We do have good data from the SCADA of the tanks, or of the run times for those wells. And that's why we know that they run 24/7 at certain times of the year. So we did use that data to see what we really think the demands are, the run times of the wells and the actual production that we're measuring right now. Comparing that to the service meters, the service meter demands were much lower. I think there's some leakage, there's other things going on there. There's kind of a struggle with the service meters because they're read, some of them are only read annually. Anyway, so we trusted that SCADA data more. So we based our current and future basically based on that, the well run times and the well production rates. So that's where we get these numbers. So current demand, your average daily use is, over 750,000 gallons per day based on that. And then the max day is that 1.8 million, which is, like we said, that's all 3 wells running every minute of that day. So that's basically as much as they could produce right now. And then as you project those out, there's a big chunk on top of that. You're looking at adding another 500,000 gallons per day on that peak. So, it's
I
growing.
was just checking your numbers, it looks right.
Yeah, it's growing. Burn also helped, we looked at some of the leakage, how much water are we losing? It's hard to tell when your meters don't all match, right? One thing that Burn helped us look at was, you could look at the tank levels in the SCADA data and see what that does, for example, overnight in the winter, And so they did look at that, and it was showing roughly 250,000 gallons per day, potentially of leakage by looking at that. So that's considerable. And again, that's stuff that it's not showing up. So I guess in a report, we're saying, okay, projections, you have more growth, you have a lot of demands, there's some leakage. What else can you do? There's some water conservation potentially that might want to be looked at in the future. With your rates that you have, it's basically just a flat rate based on how many gallons that you use. Some places have what they call an increasing block rate, where the first so many gallons you pay one rate, and then the next 10,000 or whatever you pay a higher rate, and it continues to escalate to kind of discourage people from using a lot of water, by hitting their pocketbook a little bit there. And if they do use it, then you get the income from that. The new meters will help this a lot. Then you'll really be able to see where water is going much better than we do right now. You can compare your main meters to your service meters much better. And then, really the crunch time that Craig's having is in the summer. These hot days like probably today was, or maybe even a little hotter than this, where you're really using a lot of water. There might need to be some education or something that, hey, when it's this hot month of the year or whatever is decided, you might, you could even have people alternate days. There's a number of different things you could do to kind of spread that use out a little bit and try to dampen those peaks. So anyway, we have some suggestions in the report for that as well. Okay, recommendations. So all that said, we put together a list of recommendations that we thought would be helpful, based on all these different things that we've seen and talked about. Number one is, and we've talked about this quite a bit already, the connection of the mega well to the water system, to bring that in and have that other source. That would require a bore under Highway 26. The one line, they're really actually quite close together, and the planning was that would be connected at some point in the future. So it's not a huge project, but the bore is probably going to be somewhat costly. To start out with my number one here, we just left that as using the existing pump that's in the well and the existing piping. It's 8-inch piping that comes from the well. It does, there's a little bit of jogging back and forth to get it back to the bridge, for example, or up to the tank. But at the low, it's producing 400 or 450. The piping that's there is fine for that type of level right now. Number two would be to increase the mega well production. And Bern alluded to this earlier, maybe putting a new pump into there to jump it up to 1,200 gallons per minute. By doing that, you now have some bottlenecks in your system between the mega well and your tank, and the mega well and the bridge, to be able to serve these areas. So this is a bigger project because it basically connects some loops in some places and upsizes some pipe to allow that to work better. That you could actually get that 1,200 gallons per minute up to the tank or out to the users. We also put in there backup power at the mega well as well, because there's nothing there now. Number three that we had on the list was additional storage tank here on the south side of the river. If you remember, I talked about how, yes, we have 3 tanks, but really the one tank is what serves the bulk of the use, with some help from the North Star tank. We were talking on the way down that Thane has a similar situation where you have 2 tanks that are some distance away. You fill the one tank, there's some lag of this other tank filling, the pump shuts off, well then this one's still lower, so it ends up dropping your tank some to equalize. And so yeah, I'm sure there's some of that going on as well. So anyway, I think more more storage where the higher demands are in conjunction with the mega well, and that kind of addresses that 2 times max day that we were talking. You know, so we're kind of doing some of both. Some storage, some additional source, and that can help address that.
So you think another tank on the south side helps?
Correct.
Or it doesn't make sense to put one on the north side?
I don't think so, because you've already got plenty on the north.
Okay,
I think it needs to be closer to the use, closer to the demand.
okay.
And it could be right next to that existing tank, that existing 500,000 gallon
Gotcha,
tank.
okay.
Yeah. You have a comment?
The other advantage of having that is you also add some redundancy. So if you have to take a tank offline to clean it, if you had a problem with the tank, you can dry one up. You still have one that you can pump up to from those wells, and you can deal with your problem and then bring it back online. So 2 500s is better than 1 million in that scenario. Yeah, just redundancy and reliability for maintenance purposes.
Number 4 is just improvements at the Alpine well house. We talked about replacing that pump at well number 3, which is already in process. I believe has that been ordered then, Craig? Okay. You know, we talked about ordering that. You know, the town would cover that, but then you could have the old pump basically as a backup if needed in a pinch. This electrical issue where we talked about where, you know, whatever upgrades might be needed so all those wells can run at 100% capacity and without tripping or having a fault. That's part of that as well. And then, as Bern mentioned, having water level measurement in all those wells so we can track that data. And I believe that the state is, I mean, they actually require that as part of your permit. It's rarely enforced, but apparently it's becoming more wanted to be enforced by the state. Is that right, Bern?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They're trying to get people to comply with their permits, and it's been in there for decades.
Yeah. And I do have a picture there of the impeller of that well number 3 when they took that out and took a look at it. It looks pretty chewed up, yeah. And we think it was just from sediment. It was a newer well than the other 2, and it just had more wear than the other 2 have over the last decade. So. Okay, we just kept making up more recommendations here. Number 5 we had on the list was leak detection and repairs. It really wasn't possible to throw a number at that at this point, but you know they can do acoustic leak detection and see where some of those are with, you know, by listening to those. Number 6, we talked about this a little bit, the Flying Saddle well house. You know, some work could be done on those to bring the one well, the larger, back into play. There was a chlorination chamber that was part of that it doesn't work, it's been damaged or whatever. You know, that could be bypassed. We don't think that's really needed anymore with now that the Flying Saddle's on sewer and whatnot. And I think even one option in there that Bern had was you may just want to just drill another well in that site. It may be better in the long run than trying to rehab the one that you have there. Number 7 that I have is upgrade the pipe to the lower tank. So from the well house here on the south up to the tanks, and this is something we found out in the model, it's an 8-inch pipe, and if you're running all 3 pumps, which happens in the summer, there's quite a bit of loss in that stretch. You're, you know, cramming 1,200 gallons or whatever it is through an 8-inch pipe, and it's just, anyway, there's some friction loss there. That pipe could be upsized, and that would help as well with the overall how your system works. Number 8, I had upgrading the SCADA system. Right now, the North Star tank is not tied into your SCADA system, so we really don't know what's happening with that. The Mega Well, I believe it has a SCADA that looks at the runtime, but it's not tied to the meter that's in there. So that could be tied to the meter as well, and then you would have more of a flow information. So the SCADA system's good. There's just some updates. You know, it can be tied into your new meters at your well house too, and that you just have a whole other window of data that you're going to have there with flows. Number 9 was maintenance at the North Star tank. Now, where that tank is not a concrete tank, there is some periodic maintenance that's required of that. And this is from I ended up contacting the suppliers who put this in, help put this in. There are some cathodic protection items there that need to be updated every so often, and I doubt it's ever been done. It's probably past time, so there's some things there where they have to replace that cathodic protection to keep that going. And then there's some seals in there that they said also need to be replaced periodically. So there's a few things there on maintenance of that tank. As far as water rights, number 10, Byrne listed quite a few things that we have in the study here. It's basically just getting all the water rights of all these wells up to date. For example, we talk about the mega well. If this is tied into the system, it's basically going to be it'll be potentially serving the entire Alpine system. So the area of use would need to be updated on that. And did we think, Byrne, I'm trying to remember. It's done? Okay. Okay. Was well number 3, had that been updated as well? Because you've added North Star, the north side of the river, since those wells were all done. So
State line all the way down.
on all the wells?
Yeah.
Okay. 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 Well, maybe some of that's already been done then. So.
Yeah, I did, the flying saddle wells were the ones that looked like they had not been re-described for the full service area.
Okay.
At least when I looked at it.
So if you did want to keep that, then there would be some work there. That's why it's 10 on the list. And number 11 we have is, you're going to have all this meter project done later this year. You're going to have, as you collect that data, kind of do another look at this and say, okay, let's correct some of these things, and now we have better data, see where we're really at. So, whether that's a year or two in the future, that, you see a winter and a summer and kind of see how things go, there can be some updates there as well.
Sounds like a winter project too.
Right.
Sit down and look at data.
We did put costs to these. We didn't do all of them. The first 4 here, like you said, that initial disconnection to the mega well, it's a little over 400,000. The 2, increasing the mega well production, a lot of that cost, that 1.8 million, is in pipe, upsizing pipe through that system. It's quite a distance from the mega well clear back to the bridge and and that's really, it's already 12-inch basically from the tank down to that area, but it's basically in that area. An additional tank here. We're opening bids on another tank south of Afton here next week. I'll see if that number needs to be adjusted a little bit. See where we fall.
They're actually coming down a little. Some tanks we've bid in Utah, we've had, because growth is slowing, they had like 8 contractors bid on one.
Oh.
So we're seeing some potentially better prices.
Number 5 and number 6 were like the leak detection. We left that out because that's kind of that could be all over the place. 6 was the flying saddle improvements. That it depends whether do you drill a new well or do you rehab. Anyway, we had in the report some costs there that can be helpful in the future as far as planning goes. Okay, let's talk about financing a little bit. So we did look at the finances for the town for their water fund. You have over $1 million in the fund. You have 3 loans. One will be paid off next year, and there's 2 more that'll be paid off in 2031. So you're in a pretty good position as far as that goes. It's a well-run water fund. Your current rates, and I know your rates are kind of, you have this district part, and I'm going to kind of ignore that for now, but $31 plus $2 per thousand. So like I said, that's what you currently are now. The connection fee right now for just a standard residential is $3,500. I know you're doing a rate study right now, so that might change, but those are, I would say the $3,500 is definitely on the low side for a connection. I think I read somewhere in here, I figured your average bill was about $65. That's probably over the year, if you take the whole year and divide it out by number of connections and all that. So it's not cheap, but it's not astronomical either. So there might be some room there if needed for future projects. Of course, you want to get some funding with the future projects to help keep those rates in check. So we look at different sources of funding. The key one, of course, where your funding the study is Wyoming Water Development Commission. And in the past, they're typically 67% grant, 33% loan. In recent years, that has become more of a 50-50 due to their available funds and the number of people asking for money. So it still officially is 67-33, but yeah, it seems like the last couple of years there's not a lot of that happening. Their eligibility is for items that are for supply and storage and transmission. They don't cover distribution, but they cover a lot of the things that we're talking about. The backbones of the system is what water development looks at. Office of State Lands and Investments and the SLIB board, they have a number of different ways of going with that. They have mineral royalty grants and things like that. They have different rates. They have different grants that are available. They're a good source. I know you guys have used them in the past for some things, so they're a good source for some funds as well. And they can be, I talked about 50 grant and loan for Water Development Commission. Whatever money you might get from SLIB can, supplant that loan portion and be used as the match. The Wyoming Drinking Water State Revolving Fund is another potential. The good thing about them is if you do end up with some loan, their current interest rate is 1.5%. They do have some principal forgiveness. I think that might be a little more up in the air now with whatever, because this is more of a federal money that's coming through, so it might not have as much principal forgiveness in the future, so that's kind of an unknown, but you would know that when you apply. They would let you know if they have it available. You do need to get on the intended use plan for that, and you do for the SLIB money as well. USDA Rural Utility Service, you really don't qualify real well for them. They look at income rates and things like that. And Alpine's high enough that you really don't get any breaks with them. Their current rate is just the market rate, which is 4.25. So, looking at these, that probably wouldn't be the first one you look at. Oh, let me go back here before I hit that. So we did in here, we kind of looked at options of, okay, if you did this project and then made some different assumptions of you had 50% water development or if you just did it on your own, it would cost this much in the end. If you had 50%, it would cost this much. If you had this grant and this loan, anyway, we kind of have a matrix of those for each
Just
of.
show them that table, Lonnie. That's
I didn't put it on here. It's kind of hard to see.
79.
So that's like the various scenarios for funding that you could look at for the different alternatives. So that's a tool for you.
So it kind of helps you look, the different scenarios of what funding you might be able to get and kind of what that would do to you as far as cost goes.
So Lonnie, this study is supposed to be done in September. When are level 3 applications due?
So level 3 applications to our office are due September 1st. And so with that being said, I know the study might not be finalized until September, but since it's in the draft report and it's pretty much there, yeah, we're far enough along where it's not going to be an issue. The main thing that we'd have to do is have it fully finalized by the November funding meeting. And that's when the rubber would really meet the road. And so September 1st, you'd apply for a level 3 project. It would be likely someone from our construction division would come out, assess it, write up a recommendation, and then that would go in front of the commission. And with these, we do have, since our office has started, we've kind of had the same amount of money or same amount of allocation. And that, I think that was back in the 80s when we started. Now we're in the 2020s, so everything has drastically risen in cost. So now we're trying to spread it further, so we do hope that other entities will be applied for, so like SLIB and other grant or other loan funds, just to kind of spread the money more, because it's just hard because we don't want to spend all of it in one place and not have, because a lot of systems are in drastic need. It's just
What's your annual allocation?
Oh, that is a good question. I'll have to get back to you on that.
Okay.
Because it kind of varies, because we have our annual allocation for projects varies, but I'll get back to you
Okay.
on that for the actual numbers.
Can you just walk us through really quickly what, for the level 3 application, would we be just picking a project, let's say upgrading the mega well, we just put in our application for that. We know it's either 400 and some thousand like you said, or do we go for the big dog, the full upgrade? What makes sense to you?
Oof. On the spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, It's a, I mean,
I mean, I guess the other question is, can we afford?
yeah, and
Right.
I think.
Well, that's the
Because
thing.
if it's a 50-50, I feel like we're not.
If we get 50, and then we also go to SLIB to ask for the other 50, we might have some sort of match in there. But yes, it's going to keep going down. But this, we may have to do the small project initially and then plan eventually. But for that mega well to really be effective, it needs to be upgraded.
I'm just not sure, are we in good graces with Slate?
Yeah, no, we're in good. The other thing is, we're looking to implement impact fees, and the impact fees will only be coming in once we have growth and we have, people coming into the system. So it's hard to determine what that's going to bring in, but eventually we should have money to fund a lot of these projects, but that only comes after growth.
So to your question, I think with our office, we're being more and more critical about our funding and like the applications, just because in the past we did have a lot more money where we could kind of spread it all out and fund most projects. So with that being said, we typically do get, I think last year we had to not fund 3 or 4 projects that came in. So with that, we are now looking more at like DEQ standards and looking at that. So a lot of these projects are eligible for us, but then we will look at redundancy, and our office doesn't fund redundancy because we just want to make sure that it can go all over. So, and with that also being said, our office, the staff will recommend to the commission. We could recommend do not fund, and the commission could fund it. So like we are not the ultimate decision makers. So that's another thing. We previously had a project where the office said do not fund, and the sponsor came in and told their story, and the commission acted on the other way, and they funded the project. So it's, but with that,
Are you saying that the improvements or connecting the mega well might be a redundancy project because it's like adding redundancy?
so with the mega well, adding the mega well, it would, I think, from conversations with the office, it might, just because of you guys are meeting the DEQ Chapter 12 average day demand, it might be seen as redundancy, but then again, you can still tell your own story. And I think some things that were brought up that have recently come to light is the recent break by the well house, and that was your main water source. So like, there are some things where the DEQ standards don't take that into account. As Ryan was saying, it's just the location of everything also does matter. So I think we're trying to be more critical on it, but then there's also part of the story that has to be told with those applications. So I don't know if that fully answered the question, but yeah.
That's great.
And I think at a bare minimum, we need to apply for the level 3s to tie the mega well.
And
Yeah,
One-
and see where it happens,
And-
see what happens.
I mean, they can turn us down, but
Yeah.
I'm a good storyteller.
I'll go there too. I mean, we have a very appealing story, fastest growing town in Wyoming, and all the growth we're looking at, and these issues we've had.
I mean, if something catastrophic happens on that bridge, that's not an easy fix. And if we don't have a source on that side of the river, those guys are SOL.
Yeah.
and one
They
thing,
could-
oh, you can go.
Yeah, just anything catastrophic on that bridge, it would be not good.
And one thing to note, you're currently with the level 1 being in our system, so you have a 5-year grace period where you can apply and you don't have to pay an application fee. So there's another thing where you could apply and you're not, I think the application fee wasn't terribly, it was like $1,500 or $2,000, but you still get that waived since you're currently in our office process.
That sounds great. We definitely want to put an application in for level 3, and so we'll figure out how to do that.
Going around the state, how many applicants do you see coming September? A lot. Okay.
I would say quite a bit. And our applications fund municipalities and irrigation districts. And so we recently, I know most of this was funded outside of our office, but like we had the Laprelle Dam and the Goshen tunnels. So we have quite a bit of major infrastructure that's aging because sadly in the past, once stuff was built, they didn't account for maintenance or repairing that. They just kind of were like, oh, this is done, so let's just keep going. And so like after 100 years or so, it's in bad shape. So it's, yeah, we do get quite a few applications, so.
But like $1.5 million is not a big application for you.
Yeah, I mean, $1.5 million wouldn't be a terrible ask. It's probably one of the,
But people are asking for like 25 million.
yeah,
Oh.
yeah. So it's not like a out of the world ask.
No problem.
This is like,
That directs us which way we want to go. Yeah.
Just need a little bit, here's our sauce.
They seriously fund like a pump station in Rock Springs we're working on right now. They're asking for like 20, 25.
Okay.
So it's,
And there's been times too where you may go and ask for 8 million and the water development comes back and says, well, why don't you do this over, why don't you phase this in and do this over time? You know, Dry Creek and Cottonwood, they phase things in over
they've been getting
years.
$1.5 million every year for like 5 years. in a row.
Right, right. So,
They're just little.
so there's ways to deal with that, yeah.
All right. Yeah. This is all great information to improve our application through the whole process. So
Okay, we're gonna quickly end on a bang here.
let's do it.
Is that how this goes?
Yes.
So just some kind of conclusions. We've already talked about all the potential projects we're talking about, but just overall, in general, these different categories. So for maintenance, the water system is in good condition. The town should continue to budget and on these pipeline replacements and repairs at the well and the well houses and at the North Star tank and keep those things going. Sources are in good condition. You have good water quality. They're not operating at full capacity. So there's some things that can be done there that could strengthen that situation, and we've talked about the mega well quite a bit to do that. Storage, you do have storage on both sides of the river, which is good, but additional storage could help you where your high area of use is. And I'm really paraphrasing this quickly. Transmission, you have good transmission from up to your tanks and down to town and across the bridge. There are some bottlenecks that we've talked about with the mega well and even up to the lower tank on the south side as well that could be addressed. Water losses, there's suspected that there's some considerable water loss. We talked about the soils and how it's very difficult to find that without doing a specific project to go find that. And then finances. The town's finances are in good shape as far as the water fund goes. You have more income than your outgo, so that's always a good thing. And you do have a reserve that can help. So when you're asking for some of this money, you do have a little bit of money you could use as match and things like that. So anyway, that's what we have for tonight.
Thank you guys so much. And Craig,
We're
I
just,
guess you
doing
need
these a
to
little-
just have that read.
No
in
questions. They're very
the 3-inch binder. You just need to have that read within the next couple weeks, it sounds like. But yeah.
Question, on your recommendations, you didn't make any recommendation for the Grays River Wells generator? Because the generator right now can only run one well.
Okay. No, we did not.
Okay. Is that something that should be considered or a recommendation? Because it's another big number.
Yeah, we could add that to it. I think, depending on what time of year, if you're in the
Right.
summer, yeah, it's a definite concern there.
We should definitely have Jorgensen will read some of the chapters and see if we've missed anything majorly. But yeah, we want a lot of people's input on this and just to make sure we have it covered because this is just the draft. So if there's anything that we can fill in some gaps, we want to do that. But really appreciate your time, Lonnie. Thanks for coming up from Cheyenne and yeah, thanks for all the work that you guys are doing at Sunrise. Yeah, we'll kind of look at this and see when do we need to have like suggestions or additions back to you guys or what?
Soon
What's
as
the process?
Possible. Our original deadline to have the final is August 1st. which we're only a couple weeks
Oh,
out
okay.
from that, so. But we're still waiting for comments from some water development folks and stuff too, so I don't know where that's going.
Yeah, I'd say the sooner the better, just so we can get everything wrapped up and hopefully finalized by September. Like our August 1st deadline,
Yeah.
it can be moved around, but I think trying to get it done by September would even like,
That's the most important thing.
And we need to have answers to it. We're producing documents, we're producing deliverables, so, yeah, you can't wait till August 25th, and, yeah, it'll all be
Okay,
printed.
so we've got a couple weeks to get back to you then, at the most.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you guys so much, with
Thank you,
seeing
Bert,
no.
for
Yeah, thanks, Bert.
hanging with us late
Seeing,
night in Alpine.
We have no further business. I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.